Dr. Jill Stein is an organizer, a physician, and a pioneering environmental health advocate. She was the Green Party's 2012 candidate for President of the United States. She is, thank you. She's been on the front lines of social, economic, and environmental justice, fighting for healthcare and education as human rights, to stop dangerous fossil fuel and nuclear power, and create 20 million healthy, community-based green jobs instead. During the 2012 presidential campaign, she was arrested 3 times for defending homeowners from eviction by predatory banks, for entering the grounds of a presidential debate that was unfairly excluding her, and for bringing food to protesters blocking the deadly tar sands pipeline in Texas. Born in Chicago and raised in Highland Park, Illinois, she graduated magna cum laude from Harvard College in 1973 and from Harvard Medical School in 1979. She is the co-author of 2 widely praised scientific reports, In Harm's Way, Toxic Threat to Child Development, published in 2000, which has been translated into 4 languages, and Environmental Threats to Healthy Aging, published in 2009. Jill's efforts to protect public health were recognized in several awards, including the Clean Water Action's Not in Anyone's Backyard Award, and the Children's Health Hero Award, and the Toxic Action Center's Citizen Award. After decades of practicing internal medicine, she now practices political medicine, focusing on what she calls the mother of all illnesses, our sick political system. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Jill Stein.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you to Headrock and Anita for saying so well what it is that we're here today for and what it is that we are really dedicated to and working for and working towards. And this is such a wonderful time to be doing that. And thank you, actually, to you all for being here today, because this is an amazing historic moment. There is a movement for democracy and justice that is sweeping the planet, and people are rising up and calling for an America and a world that works for all of us. Thank you. We're told that we are in a recovery, but in fact, we are in an emergency, and the political parties that got us into this mess are completely incapable of getting us out. So the American people are leading the way forward. And the demand for deep change has grown to a fevered pitch. Young people are leading the courageous Black Lives Matter movement to stop police militarization and racist violence, and calling for an end to extrajudicial murders of so many African American children and parents like Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown, Eric Garner, and more. Families and teachers are mobilizing to keep schools from closing in our communities and to simply keep public education in existence. Momentum is growing against abusive high-stakes testing that forces poor kids down the deadly school-to-prison pipeline. And the fight is building against predatory mass incarceration that holds 1 in 3 African American men hostage to our vast prison state. Workers are fighting for a living wage and for the right to a union. Students are demanding an end to college debt that has crippled a generation. Hardworking immigrants are standing up for a humane path to citizenship, not simply a 3-year deferral of deportation. Frontline and indigenous communities are leading the resistance to toxic fossil fuels that threaten to disrupt civilization as we know it in our lifetimes. The list goes on because this movement is alive and well in our communities, and it marks the coming of age of a new generation. So it's time for a generational shift in our national vision. We've had enough of rule by the economic elite with their cult of cutthroat competition and their religion of greed. We've had enough of corporate capitalism that puts profits ahead of people, planet, and peace. These deranged values have dominated media, politics, and the economy for decades. And it's now clear for all to see where they lead: to extreme inequality, to economic despair, to racism, endless war, and climate catastrophe. So it's time for a new way forward, with a new society, a new economy, a new energy and food system, and a new era of racial justice. The old politics is collapsing, and the political vacuum is begging to be filled. That vacuum was plainly seen in the 2014 midterm elections. And those elections were not a victory for Republicans, as they've been widely misrepresented, but they were actually a rejection of Democrats. 2014's record low voter turnout reflected profound disillusionment with both parties. So 2016 provides an incredible opportunity to fill that political vacuum and surge forward. The voices of resistance and transformation deserve to be heard loud and clear. And that's why I am announcing today the formation of an exploratory committee for the 2016 presidential election. We will use this exploratory campaign to reach out to young people, to workers, employed, underemployed, and discouraged, to frontline communities, to immigrants, to communities of color. We'll reach out to women and seniors, indigenous nations, the LGBT community, and all who've been neglected, abandoned, or betrayed by the Democratic and Republican parties. And we'll offer a campaign in service of the justice that they deserve. The Green Party can do this because we are the only national party that is not poisoned by corporate money. The only one. In 2012, we emerged as the nation's leading progressive party, challenging the status quo. And now we are going to build on that. We will lift up the bold solutions that the American people are calling for: 20 million living wage jobs in an emergency Green New Deal to enrich our communities, not corporations, to rein in climate change, and to make wars for oil obsolete. We call for health care as a human right, not a subsidized profit center for predatory insurance companies like Obamacare, but a Medicare for all system to provide quality care for everyone while saving trillions of dollars simply by streamlining the massive private health insurance bureaucracy. We call for quality-free public education as a human right, and an end to runaway school privatizations and closings, high-stakes testing, and student loan debt. We call for an emergency transition to a green economy powered by 100% wind, water, and sun by 2030. We call for a welcoming path to citizenship for immigrant residents and an end to the predatory trade deals and political interventions that created the surge of mass migration to start with. We call for an end to the racist war on drugs, the school-to-prison pipeline, militarized police, the surveillance and prison state, and a radical reduction of America's prison population. And finally, we call for a foreign policy based on human rights, international law, and diplomacy rather than global military and economic domination. As we test the waters, we can plan the campaign of a lifetime to match this moment of historic possibility. In closing, I invite you to visit jill2016.com, connect with us, volunteer, make a donation, and in Spanish, para leer una copia de este discurso en español y darle cualquier seguimiento que necesita, por favor, visite www.jillstein.org/español.
Excelente.
Gracias. This is the time to come together. Solutions are in our hands. Justice is in our hands. Democracy is in our hands. Together, we can create a world that works for all of us and ensure that people, planet, and peace will prevail. It's in our hands.
A few quick notes before we begin the question and answer period. First, I want to repeat the website because it just launched this morning. Jill2016.com, also an advisory here to any media crafting stories or bloggers or other interested parties. An exclusive story done by ABC News just hit this morning, and that is also 2016.com. That just posted about an hour ago. Please feel free to grab it and share it. For the question and answer period, we will be using a handheld microphone. I know this room is very small, but we are live on C-SPAN TV, and the folks in their living rooms at home won't hear you unless you speak into this. I will give you the microphone. You will get to speak, but please wait until you have it in front of your mouth to speak. With that, I'd like to open it up for question and answers for Jill or any of the other panelists who were here today.
Hi, my name is Carmen Russell-Sluchansky. I'm a journalist based here in D.C. I'd like to ask Jill, what Dr. Stein, what you learned from your campaign in 2012. Obviously, a very active campaign, but I'm wondering, the things you might have learned about politics here, and stuff that goes on here in Washington, things that maybe even surprise you, but also how that might impact your 2016 campaign, what you might do differently.
Thank you, Carmen. My run in 2012 came after a series of runs at the local and state level. And I have to say, what was surprising was that there was really nothing surprising about politics and the kind of backbiting game as it's played in the mainstream world of politics. What was surprising to me was how ready people are in our communities to rise up and to really fight for something different. That amazed me. And in 2012, we were only beginning to build a national infrastructure to be able to really run a campaign. Communications, social media, website, donor lists, the whole thing. And I think that's what's really different this time around, is that people have not forgotten the incredible need for a different voice, for a different choice. And as we enter this exploratory period of the campaign, that's what we're doing, is reaching out to those communities to see, is this the right time for us to step up and work together? I'm hoping that it is.
Thank you, Jill. Jennifer Ellingston, Green Party, D.C. Of course, you're laying out the issues excellent. I have a question about something that I feel was omitted, and that's the United Nations. Now, I'm the oldest person here, and I remember when the UN was formed and what a salvation it was for the planet Earth. We really thought we have a recourse. We have a place where something called justice and public, all that sort of thing. And over the past several administrations, the UN is mentioned less and less. And in the present one, we are against Palestine joining the UN. You know, the UN is not a recourse reference. It's something to be historical. We don't need it. And I really want you to put it on your list, which is wonderful, your list of issues, that why the UN is a way to restore some kind of justice and legal determination rather than underhandedly go to war, I don't care whether it's Haiti or Yemen or what it is, go to the UN.
That's
Thank
right.
you very much.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you for your wonderful foundational work. Jennifer Ellingston, founder of the Green Party in D.C., the D.C. Statehood Green Party. And I'll just say that, you know, I completely agree that instead of this sort of shoot first foreign policy that we have, you know, diplomacy, international law, and human rights really needs to be at the forefront. And the UN has become a mixed bag. We've seen that in the climate proceedings in the UN, where it's really become kind of a front for lobbyists, for corporate lobbyists, and the climate conferences have become really climate summits for energy lobbyists. So we have work to do with the UN. The UN badly needs to be reformed and democratized, and we need to get, you know, the big, powerful corporate countries out of, exactly. We need to get them out of the business of suppressing democracy in the UN. Thank you.
Other questions?
Kerry Campbell, Green TV. Dr. Stein, Green parties around the world have been very successful. In Germany, they're in the majority of state legislatures. On Sunday, an election there looks like it'll put them in still another, the 9th or 10th state legislature governing in there, Australia, across the world. A key success has been their positive Green New Deal, eco-jobs for the economy, solar jobs, wind jobs, geothermal jobs, rail jobs, bikeability, walkability, pedestrian friendly. And the important economic effects you can speak to, and that's my question. Please talk more, if you would, and tell us what are the positive health solutions for a Green Party, Green New Deal, with the obesity epidemic killing Americans and the diabetes across the nation.
Thank you for making that point, Kerry, because what's good for the planet is also good for the economy and is also good for our health, which is why the Green New Deal is a win-win-win. In fact, studies have shown, this was a study out of Stanford by Mark Jacobson about 2 years ago, looked at the state of New York as a case study and basically found that going to 100% wind, water, and sun by 2030 was going to pay for itself simply in health savings alone. We sort of take air pollution for granted and water pollution and things like that. We take it for granted and assume that these are God-given conditions, that we all live with heart disease and respiratory disease and the other consequences, asthma and so on. These are just like natural parts of human society. In fact, they're not. They're not supposed to be God-given conditions that strike us really from birth on. These aren't just diseases of aging. They hit children as much as anyone else. So your point is a very good one, that there are so many benefits to greening our economy, to halting climate change, to making wars for oil obsolete, and above all, to providing those jobs right now that are essential. We can make unemployment a thing of the past. We can put everyone to work. And the good news, especially there, is that conservation and efficiency, simply saving energy by weatherizing homes and businesses and schools, all that pays for itself in about 3 years in terms of just the energy savings. So there are so many savings that kick in that this is a win on all counts. So when people ask, how are you going to pay for it? Essentially, it pays for itself, and we are paying to the teeth by not moving forward right now in a way that can also solve the climate crisis by a timely intervention now. Thank you.
Hi, Jill. Nice to see you again. My name is Bonnie Lane. I'm a 2016 Baltimore mayoral candidate seeking the Green Party nomination. My question is regarding the war on drugs. What do you think about decriminalizing all illicit drugs as was done in Portugal and creating safe spaces and ending also the war against drug addicts? And how do you propose to do that?
In general, let me just answer that broadly because that's a wonderful and deeply involved question. But in general, we need to move from criminalizing the use of substances to treating it as a public health issue. There's no doubt that that needs to be our overarching approach. Criminalizing people who have addiction problems only makes them worse, and then they go out and then they're confronting, joblessness and homelessness based on being, former prisoners. So our current system basically compounds the war on drugs. It makes it worse, and we can fix this now. It's an absolute crime that people are in jail for using drugs that are less harmful than nicotine and alcohol. So the whole drug war is completely baseless, foundless, immoral, racist, and it needs to be transformed into a public health agenda, and people who are currently serving time on account of using recreational substances who've not been involved in violent crime should have their sentences commuted.
Hi, Jill. I'm Kristen Combs. I'm a public school teacher in Philadelphia. I was really pleased to hear you mention education during your talk. Could you talk more about what your vision of education would look like? Public school teachers are attacked on a regular basis by the current administration, and I'd really like to hear more about your vision.
Great, thank you, and thank you for standing up for public schools. I think we need an education system that teaches the whole student, the whole person for lifetime learning. I think the demeaning of education into high-stakes standardized testing is a betrayal, really, of the mission of education, which should be about developing the whole person, about lifetime learning, and about developing our capacity for democracy. Democracy fundamentally depends on education and on our ability to make informed choices and to inform ourselves and so on. So we need strong public schools. We should not be privatizing our schools. And we need community-based schools, but they shouldn't have to be privatized in order to be community-based. Parents and teachers and students all need a role. But creating charters and taking, sort of cherry picking the students who have more supportive families, who can work harder, who can pass the test, they get cherry picked out, and public schools get left with the challenged kids. And I guess my other visionary sort of thought about the big vision in education is that kids need to come to school prepared to learn. If they're coming malnourished, if they're coming sick, if they're walking through communities that are beset by violence, if they are homeless, and if they are jobless, that is an education problem too. We cannot separate education off and think we can fix it without dealing with poverty.
I think we have time for about 2 or 3 more questions. I have one here, and then Margaret, and then I've got this gentleman over here.
Good morning, Jill.
Good morning.
I would like to know what is the prison reform about?
Yes.
As far as what are you going to do?
Yeah, great. Very important question. Thank you. There's a lot that needs to be done for prison reform. First of all, we have to stop. We have to stop shoving people into prison, entire populations and communities, 1 out of every 3 African-American men. There is a racist prison system, state, that is shoving, directing, forcing people who are economically disadvantaged in that direction. People who don't have jobs, sometimes turn to dealing in drugs in order to survive. That's just a fact. And that shouldn't be the case. Where there is hope in our communities, where people have jobs, they are not forced into dangerous and risky professions in order to stay alive. I think we need to do away with the mandatory minimums that are throwing people into jail for very long terms. Jail needs to be, that is, prison time should be about rehabilitation. It should not be about vengeance. We need to prepare people to move back into society. The term is used, restorative justice, that I think says a lot about what should be the vision of our prison system. It should not be about retribution and revenge. It should be about rehabilitation and reconnecting people with their communities, and in fact preventing people from the start from being, from being torn from their families and from their communities, going down pathways of violence and crime and so on. We need to provide people with hopeful and sustainable and just pathways forward. Thank you.
Good morning, Jill. Dr. Margaret Flowers. And there's been more than a 100-year struggle in this country of people fighting for a national health system that's based on health and not profit. The Affordable Care Act actually further empowered the medical industrial complex, which is in the way of us getting that type of a system. Do you have the courage to take on that privatized, powerful medical industrial complex? And how do you think that the people will respond when you begin to speak about a Medicare for all type of health system?
Well, Margaret, you know well what this is about, and that none of us can do this alone. And, to my mind, the imperative for this campaign is to bring that struggle, which you and so many other physicians and everyday people, are pushing forward to create a healthcare system that's accountable to us, that's about our right to healthcare, not about generating more profits for pharmaceutical and health insurance companies.
Here.
Furthermore, we have a sick care system. It's not a health care system. It allows all kinds of things to go on that make us sick, whereas the vast majority of illnesses, chronic illnesses in particular, are actually preventable and are inflicted on us by various social and nutritional and toxicologic conditions and social conditions as well. So we can do the right thing, and we've got a wonderful crew to be fighting this battle, and kudos to you and PNHP and Popular Resistance and PPERC, Poor People's Economic Human Rights Campaign, and many others who are in this audience and listening today who've been a part of this struggle. Polls continue to show that this is what most Americans want, and it's really just for lack of a voice in the process. And for the fear campaign that tells us we don't dare stand up for what's actually within arm's reach, what we can achieve, what will make our lives better, which will make us healthier, which will give us a more secure economy. That's all within our reach. And standing up for our health, in my view, is part of standing up for our economic health and our social health and the health of our democracy. And as we come together, and a national political campaign, a national presidential campaign is a great way to build these coalitions, as you are doing in Popular Resistance. This gives that kind of social movement another voice in the political arena, and that's where we begin to get traction. If you look at, for example, what's happening in Greece with Syriza, things only began to really change for the better when that social movement also became a political movement, and that political movement had a meteoric rise from 3% about 5 years ago to being the majority party and having the prime minister of Greece now in that party. We're seeing the same thing happening in Spain. In the UK, the Green Party is also experiencing a really fast upsurge. And in the US, for better or for worse, it's not likely things are going to change. The predators are at the wheel, at the steering wheel, and they have no intention of giving it up. So they are going to keep driving public support into our direction. So I think we have a very exciting future. I encourage everybody to go to the website, jill2016.com, weigh in. Let's make this the campaign of a lifetime in this moment of historic transformation. Thank you so much.
Dr. Stein, we did have two other people on the stack, as it were, who I promised to ask questions, but we'll make them quick, and we'll wrap up the public forum, this Q&A. The candidate, Dr. Stein will be available for individual interviews with individual media who wish to stay around after the next two questions, which will finish our Q&A, and they'll be brief.
Very brief, I promise.
I'll be very brief. I'm David Schwartzman, the U.S. Senator candidate for the D.C. State of Green Party. As you know, the Green Party supports statehood for D.C., the only national party that does. What will you do to promote our goal nationally and internationally?
And I missed a couple words. Was that towards statehood? Yeah. Yes. Well, you know, Washington, D.C. is a very important place. As Hedrock was saying early on, this is really the seat of power, and this is where so many battles are fought. So, you know, I will be here. I will, and again, I'm in an exploratory campaign right now. If things go well, my intent would be to be here fighting that fight with you and to clarifying, you know, this is everybody's fight. It's a national disgrace that our national capital is a colony of the two-party corporate state. Yes.
Final question.
Jill Stein, Dec Abdi with the Poor People's Economic Human Rights Campaign, and I would like to know what you will do to bring young people that are disillusioned with the two-party system into the fold and to make them more welcome and understanding of democracy.
Thank you, Dec. That is the question of the hour, and I think that is something we can only do together. And that's part of what we're doing in this exploratory phase, is calling on people out there who want to see this happen, who want to see, you know, a choice and a future for young people who don't have jobs, you know, who are swamped with debt, and who don't have a climate future to look forward to, you know, and who are dealing with all the insecurities in our economy right now. So this is a time for us to mobilize, because to not mobilize is to ensure that, you know, that we're going over the cliff here, especially for young people on whose shoulders all of these burdens force hardest. So we need to have young people at the helm and leading this charge. So my hope is during this exploratory campaign, we're going to get organized, we're going to stand up, we're going to see who's going to be counted, and we are going to have a campaign like we've never seen.
It's in our hands.
It's in our hands.
Thank you very much, everyone. This concludes. So the formal question and answer session is now concluded. For those members of the media who wish to have individual interviews with Dr. Stein or Anita Rios or Hedrock or any of the activists assembled here in support of the exploratory committee, please approach them directly or approach me, and I'll help you get those interviews. For everyone else, thank you very much for coming.
Okay. Excuse me. Taping. That'd be great. Yeah.
David, how are you doing? Oh.
Yeah, the other one of those I left at the house. So.
Oh, good. I'm going to grab some of this interview.
Oh, I'm sorry.